Have you ever picked up a glass of water and your hand suddenly felt clumsy and spilled it? Have you ever been writing a grocery list and forgot how to spell a simple word like milk? Or maybe there was a morning when you tried to say something, but the words just slipped away before you could speak them. If any of those things have happened to you even just once, I truly urge you to watch this entire video. It might change the way you start your mornings, and it might help you or someone you love avoid something far more serious. My name is Dr. Sam Wells. I'm a health specialist with over 2 decades of experience working with people over 50 here in the U. So, I'm not here to scare you. I'm here to remind you of the small things most people overlook until it's too late. You see, strokes don't always start with a thunderclap. They often begin quietly, subtly, in a way that feels just like any other morning. It might just be a dropped key. It might just be sitting on the edge of your bed a little longer than usual. It might just be skipping water and diving straight into the news, sighing before your day even begins. I've seen these things, and I've heard far too many people say, "I wish I had known sooner, doctor." In today's video, I'll share with you the 3 earliest warning signs of stroke, the quiet ones that are often mistaken for just getting older. And I'll walk you through 5 everyday morning habits that most people repeat without thinking, but that may silently be tripling your risk of stroke, especially after 60 sites. And if you're in your 50s or 60s, or if you have parents, a partner, or someone you love in that age range, don't keep this to yourself. Please share this video with them. And if you believe knowledge can protect your health, I invite you to subscribe to this channel. We can't change our age, but we can absolutely change how we live each day. Are you ready? Because what I'm about to share may be something no one has ever told you, but they should have. Long ago. Sign 1. Unusual clumsiness in movement. I just dropped a glass. Doctor, you really think it's something serious? I've heard that sentence more times than I can count. It usually comes with the same sheepish smile, the same apologetic tone from older gentlemen in their 60s or 70s, sitting across from me in my office, telling me about something that sounds harmless. One tells me he's been dropping his keys a little more lately. Another says he's struggling to button his shirt in the morning. Maybe my fingers are just stiff from the cold. Someone else admits his hand sometimes shakes slightly while pouring coffee, not much. Just enough to spill a little. Have you ever felt something like that? If you have, I want to ask you to pause for a moment. Not to panic, but to pay attention. I'm Dr. Sam Wells. For over 25 years, I haven't just studied strokes. I've lived among the stories of real people who experienced them. And if you had seen what I've seen, you would never forget. Because a stroke, contrary to what movies might show, very rarely begins with a dramatic collapse or a contorted face. No, it often begins with a hand that doesn't land where it should. A shirt that suddenly feels harder to button, a glass that slips from your fingers and hits the floor, and you can't quite explain why. I remember a patient named Robert. He was 72, a retired senior accountant, sharp, meticulous, the kind of man who balanced his checkbook to the penny. He didn't come to see me because he felt pain. He didn't come because he was worried. He came because he said, in the most casual way, "Lately, my hand feels like it's not listening. I've been dropping things. The other day, I accidentally poured hot water onto my wife's hand. Thank goodness it didn't burn her." He laughed. But I didn't, because I heard what was really being said, and I also heard what wasn't being said. We ordered an MRI. The results showed that Robert had experienced a TIA, a transient ischemic attack, what many call a mini-stroke. It left no permanent damage, but it was a clear warning that the next one might not be so forgiving. Here's what most people don't realize. When blood flow to the brain is even slightly disrupted, sometimes just for a few seconds, the first thing to be affected is not your strength, but your precision, that smooth coordination, the timing, the accuracy of movement. Those are delicate functions, and they're often the first to go when something's wrong. You may still feel strong. You may still be able to move, but your hand is just a little off. Your timing is just a bit behind. Your fingers don't quite listen the way they used to. That's not nothing. That is your brain waving a small flag. That is your body whispering, "Pay attention." And science backs this up. A study published in the Lancet Neurology found that the 48-hour window after a TIA is the most critical. If patients receive medical attention during that time, the risk of a major stroke can drop by over 80%. But if they ignore those signs, if they think it's nothing or just age, many of them never make it to the hospital in time when the real stroke hits. And that's what I want to say to you. From one human being to another, don't minimize the small changes in your body. Don't let familiarity blind you to warning signs. Because those of us who've lived through more than half a lifetime often develop a dangerous habit. We explain everything away with the phrase, "I'm just getting older." Eyes blurry. "I'm over 60, it's normal." Hands slower. Well, reflexes fade with age. Dropping things. It happens to everyone eventually. I understand that thinking. We all want to believe we're still in control. But sometimes, the desire to look okay becomes the very reason we don't stay okay. I've had patients who told me, "It's just a little clumsiness," and then, weeks later, returned to the hospital in an ambulance. That time, it wasn't just a dropped glass. It was an arm that couldn't move, a mouth that couldn't speak, and they looked at me and said, "I wish I'd listened to you sooner." Doctor, now, I'm not saying you should panic every time you drop a spoon. I'm saying you should be more curious, more attentive, more respectful of the messages your body is sending you. Ask yourself, have my hands felt clumsier than usual lately? Are simple tasks like pouring water or buttoning a shirt starting to feel unexpectedly difficult? Do I still move the way I used to? Or is something just a little bit off? If the answer is yes, then please don't wait. Talk to your doctor, get checked. Because the earlier you catch it, the more time you have. And every day you gain is a day you get to shape your own future. I want you to remember this. A shaky hand doesn't make you old, but ignoring it might cost you everything. Your body always knows when something's wrong. It's always speaking. The question is, are you listening? And I'm here not to scare you, but to help you see what your body may already be trying to say. We'll continue in just a moment with sign 2. But before we move on, I'd like to leave you with a question to consider. When was the last time you thought, "My hands don't feel quite like they used to"? And what did you do with that feeling? Sign 2. Suddenly forgetting simple things. Have you ever sat down to write a grocery list, something you've done 100 times, and suddenly you can't remember how to spell a simple word? Maybe the word was milk, a word you've written 1,000 times before. And yet, that morning, with pen in hand, staring at the page, your mind just went blank. You probably thought, maybe I'm not fully awake yet, and then you laughed it off. You moved on, but I didn't. As someone who's worked with older adults for decades, I've come to understand this truth. Memory doesn't just fade without reason. It's like a map, and when part of it suddenly goes missing, that's not just aging. That's a signal. Let me tell you about a patient of mine's. Her name is Elaine. She was 68 when she came to see me. A bright, graceful woman still teaching senior yoga every Tuesday and Friday. She didn't come in for pain. She didn't feel sick. She came in because of one tiny moment that had stayed with her. She said, "I couldn't remember how to spell banana. Doctor, I know it's a simple word. I know exactly what it means. But that morning, I sat in front of the paper and couldn't recall the first letter. I got frustrated and gave up. Now, someone else might have shrugged and said, "Oh, I forget words too. It's probably nothing." But when you've seen what I've seen, when you've stood at the bedside of someone who just had a stroke, you stop laughing at the small signs. We ran some imaging tests for Elaine, and what did we find? She had just experienced a transient ischemic attack, a TIA, or mini-stroke just a few days before that banana moment. No sharp pain, no slurred speech, no dramatic signs, just a word. Forgotten. And this story, it's not rare. In fact, brain aging doesn't happen evenly. The parts of the brain responsible for language, speech, and short-term memory, they're often the first to show distress. Sometimes, a brief disruption in blood flow to tiny parts of the brain is all it takes to disconnect you from a memory you've known your whole life. That's not just forgetfulness. That's a temporary disruption in your nervous system, like a light bulb flickering because the power is unstable. The problem is, many people normalize this. They call it brain fog. They say they're just tired. They blame stress. But when you normalize it too often, you begin to stop being alert to what your body is telling you. And I get it. We don't want to become the kind of people who second-guess every small thing. We've lived strong, independent lives. We've taken care of others. We want to believe. I'm still fine. But sometimes, the bravest thing isn't pretending you're fine. It's having the courage to say, something doesn't feel quite right anymore. Here's something you should know. In many medical studies, it's been shown that the window between a TIA and a full-blown stroke is often incredibly short, sometimes just 48 hours. That means every minute you hesitate could be a minute lost. So if you or someone you care about has ever experienced suddenly forgetting a familiar person's name, not being able to recall how to spell a simple word, pausing mid-sentence because the right word simply vanished, then it's time to pause and give your body a chance to be heard. See a doctor. Share the experience honestly. Don't downplay it. Don't skip the details, because here's something I always tell my patients. The brain doesn't forget randomly. If it sends a signal, you need to stop and listen. Elaine listened. She took action. She made changes in her diet, stayed well hydrated, monitored her blood pressure closely, and most importantly, she preserved her active, fulfilling life. I believe you can do the same, and it all begins by not brushing off the small things. We tend to remember the big events, the pain, the trauma, the unforgettable moments. But sometimes, what matters most is a word you couldn't find, a sentence you left hanging, or a list you never finished writing. Think back. When was the last time you forgot something in a way that felt off? And if you're thinking of a moment like that right now, this may be the time to act. Don't wait until you can't remember today. Sign 3. Slight stuttering or losing your words. There are some mornings when you wake up and want to say something simple, something like, "Can you hand me my glasses?" But you hesitate. Not because you've changed your mind. Not because you're still sleepy, but because you suddenly forget what you were going to say. Or worse, you know exactly what you want to say, but the word feels stuck somewhere between your brain and your mouth. It just won't come out. You try again. The sentence makes it out, but it's not quite right. Your words feel clumsy. Your voice falters. The rhythm of your speech is off. Maybe you use the wrong word and you don't even notice it right away. If that's happened just once, maybe you brushed it off. If it's happened a few times over the last few months, you might blame it on stress or fatigue. But if it's starting to repeat itself even just occasionally, I want you to pause and really listen to your body. I once had a patient named Jonathan. He was 66, a retired school teacher. He came to see me after his wife gently said, "He's been using the wrong words when telling stories, and sometimes it's like he loses his train of thought mid-sentence." At first, Jonathan dismissed it. He said, "I'm just tired. My mind wanders sometimes." But the more we talked, the more I could hear it too, those small gaps in his speech, not obvious, not dramatic, but real, and definitely not something I could ignore. So we ran some tests, and yes, just as I suspected, he had recently experienced a small ischemic episode in the part of the brain that manages language. No major damage, no paralysis, but it was enough to create these subtle misfires between his thoughts and his voice. This kind of warning sign is more common than people think, especially among those who've always been articulate, quick-witted, confident in conversation, and that's what makes it so deceptive. When someone like that starts hesitating, stuttering slightly, or forgetting familiar words mid-sentence, it's not just getting older. It's a slowing down of the central nervous system. And if left unaddressed, that slowdown could be the first step toward a much more serious event. A stroke. We tend to imagine strokes as something loud, sudden, dramatic. A slumped face, a body collapsed, an ambulance rushing in. But in reality, many strokes begin in silence. They begin with a word that won't come, a sentence that fades, a rhythm that feels off, just slightly. And part of the problem is, we've trained ourselves not to notice. As we grow older, we're taught to push through discomfort, to not complain, to tell ourselves it's nothing serious. And deep down, we don't want to feel like a burden. But here's what I want you to hear. Sometimes, the smallest shift is your body's way of knocking gently, asking for attention before it has to scream. The language centers of your brain are incredibly complex and incredibly delicate. Even a tiny disruption in blood flow lasting just a few seconds can affect your ability to find the right word, finish a sentence, or hold a thought. And here's the danger. If you don't catch it early, that moment of silence may one day turn into something more lasting, maybe even permanent. I don't say that to scare you. I say it because I've seen too many families who look back and wish they'd said something sooner. I've seen the mother who never finished the story she was telling, the grandfather who was reading poetry to his grandson and suddenly fell silent, never to complete that poem again. These moments didn't start with pain, they started with silence. So if you've found yourself stuttering lately, mixing up words more often than usual, stopping mid-sentence and not knowing why, please don't dismiss it. Talk to your doctor. Get checked. Give yourself the chance to adjust your lifestyle, your diet, your habits before something worse has the chance to happen. I know it's not easy to admit when you feel yourself slipping, especially if you've always taken pride in your mind, your communication, your clarity. But real strength isn't about pretending to be invincible. It's about having the courage to say, something's changed, and the wisdom to act before it's too late. Can you remember the last time you misspoke? Or the last time you stopped mid-sentence and had no idea what you were trying to say? If you do, then today is the day to stop and reflect. Don't wait until you can no longer express what you feel to finally call it serious. Because this is sign number 3, and maybe, just maybe, it's the one most easily ignored. But it's also the one that tells you clearly your brain is asking for your care. And the good news is you still can. You still have the power to respond, to listen, to act. And it starts right now. Habit 1, not drinking water right after waking up. I want you to take a moment and think about your morning routine. You open your eyes, you look out the window, maybe you grab your phone, scroll through some news or head straight to the kitchen. What's the first thing you do? If you're like most of my patients, especially those in their 60s and beyond. Your answer is probably, I make myself a cup of coffee. Is that wrong? Not necessarily. I love coffee too. The aroma, the bold flavor, the way it wakes you up. But the problem isn't coffee. The problem is what you didn't do before that. You didn't drink water. I know this sounds simple. Too simple. In fact, that most people don't even think about it. But after more than 2 decades of treating older adults, I can tell you with certainty, skipping water in the morning is one of the most dangerous habits for your heart and brain. Let me explain why. When you sleep, your body goes 6 to 8 hours, sometimes more, without receiving a single drop of water. During that time, you're still breathing, detoxing, metabolizing, and because there's no fluid intake, you experience silent dehydration. Your blood becomes thicker, circulation slows down, and pressure builds up in your heart and blood vessels the moment you open your eyes. Now imagine this. You wake up, skip water, and reach straight for coffee, which is a mild diuretic. That makes your already dehydrated state even worse. Your body just spent the whole night losing water. And instead of rehydrating, you stimulate it with caffeine. Your blood pressure spikes. Your blood thickens even more. And your risk of developing a blood clot skyrockets. A study published in the European Journal of Neurology found that nearly 50% of first-time strokes that happen in the morning are linked to mild to moderate dehydration. Not genetics, not age. Just a morning habit. I remember one of my patients, Martha, 64, healthy, active, no history of high blood pressure. She showed up in the ER one morning feeling dizzy and numb on one side. We diagnosed her with a TIA, a transient ischemic attack, or a mini stroke. I asked her about her morning routine. She said, I wake up, brush my teeth, have a cup of coffee, and head to work. I asked, did you drink any water before that? She shook her head. I didn't feel thirsty. That answer stuck with me, not because she was wrong, but because so many people think the same way. We wait until we feel thirsty to drink. But dehydration starts long before thirst kicks in. Here's what I want you to understand. Your brain doesn't need thirst to tell you it's lacking water. It needs you to be proactive. It needs a glass of warm water, not cold, not iced right after you wake up. You don't need much. Just 250, 300 ml is enough to jumpstart your circulation, thin your blood, ease the pressure on your heart, and significantly lower your risk of stroke during that critical first hour of the day. Some people ask me, Doc, can I just drink water after my coffee? And I tell them, you can, but you've already missed the golden moment. Why? Because your body needs to recover before it gets stimulated. If you drink coffee first, you're revving up your nervous system while your vessels are still constricted and your blood is still thick. Change the order. Water first, then coffee. You'll feel the difference. You might be thinking, it's just a glass of water. Can it really make that much of a difference? I used to think that too, years ago. Until I watched my patients, people who checked all the boxes for good health, collapse because they started their day wrong. That's why I never just tell my patients, make sure to drink 2 liters of water a day. I tell them, start your day with 1 glass of warm water. Before anything else. Before coffee. Before medication. Before your phone. Before that call from your kids. Because that glass doesn't just soothe your throat. It soothes your blood vessels. It thins your blood. It restarts your cardiovascular system after a full night's rest. And in many cases, it can prevent a stroke with just 1 small act. So tomorrow morning, when you wake up, remember this. Don't wait until you're thirsty. Don't let coffee be first in line. Give your brain and heart a simple gift. 1 glass of warm water at the right time, in the right way. And if you live with older adults, your parents, your spouse, your loved ones remind them to do it too. Because sometimes the right glass of water is more powerful than the perfect prescription. Habit 2. Sitting too long in bed after waking up. Let me paint a picture of a typical morning. You've just woken up. There's a soft light coming in through the window, signaling the start of a new day. But instead of getting up right away, you sit there, leaning back against the headboard, maybe scrolling through your phone, or simply keeping your eyes closed for a few more minutes, or maybe even a few more dozen minutes. You think, I'm just giving myself a little more time to wake up, or I'm retired now. What's the harm in taking it slow? I understand. We live in a world that glorifies rushing, so taking it slow can feel like a form of self-care. But here's a truth that not many people talk about. After the age of 60, sitting too long in bed right after waking up can actually be a serious health risk, especially for those who already have issues with circulation, blood pressure, or heart health. Let me explain why. When you sleep, your body stays still for several hours. Blood flow slows down, especially in the lower half of the body. And as you age, your blood vessels become less elastic. They don't bounce back like they used to. It's like a river that's gone quiet overnight. Now, if you wake up and just continue sitting still for another 15, 20, even 30 minutes, that river doesn't start flowing again. Blood continues to pool in the lower part of your body, especially in your legs. Now imagine you suddenly stand up and head straight to the bathroom. In that moment, your heart has to work 2 or 3 times harder to pump blood back up to your brain because your blood is still stuck down below. And for someone older, with narrower vessels, a weaker heart, or slower reflexes, that sudden shift can be the exact moment when a stroke, fainting episode, or even worse, takes place. I've had several patients. People who seemed perfectly healthy collapse in the bathroom early in the morning. When I spoke with their family members, they often said, "Doctor, she had just woken up, sat on the bed for a bit like she always does, then got up to go to the bathroom, and she collapsed." We call this a morning circulation shock. It happens when your body hasn't been properly reactivated but is suddenly expected to move like it's fully awake. It's like starting a car that's been sitting cold all night and pressing the gas too hard. It's not going to end well. Now, I'm not saying you should jump out of bed the second you wake up. What I am saying is that you need to gently move your body while you're still in bed. Wake it up before you ask it to stand. I teach my patients a simple little routine every morning that takes just 2 or 3 minutes. While still lying in bed, start by slowly rotating your wrists and ankles. Then wiggle your fingers and toes. Take a few deep breaths. Once you sit up, gently roll your shoulders and rotate your neck a bit. Only then, go ahead and stand up. It sounds simple, right? But for someone older, those small movements are like hitting the start button for your entire circulatory system. It gets your blood flowing in a safe way, takes pressure off the heart, and prevents that lightheaded feeling many people experience when they stand up too fast. One of my patients, Henry, 71 years old, once fainted right at the bathroom door after a sleepless night. He's a very independent man, didn't like asking for help, didn't want to trouble his family. That morning, he had woken up, sat in bed for about 20 minutes scrolling through news on his phone. Then he stood up, walked to the bathroom, and didn't come back out. Thankfully, his wife noticed quickly. We were able to intervene in time, and when I asked him what happened, he was genuinely surprised. "I thought I was doing the right thing," he said, "taking it slow, not rushing." I told him, "You were half right. Taking it slow is good, but it needs to come with gentle movement. Sitting still too long after sleeping, without any movement before standing, that's the real danger." Since then, Henry has practiced what we call his morning wake-up ritual every single day. He's no longer dizzy when he gets out of bed. His blood pressure is more stable. His heart rate is more even. And most importantly, he feels like he's in charge of his mornings again. I know many people, especially after retirement, tend to relax more, and that's a good thing. But relaxation shouldn't mean inactivity. Slowing down is great. Slowing down with intentional movement, that's smart living. So tomorrow morning, I want you to do this. Put down the phone for the first 10 minutes. Instead of sitting still, invite your body to move, just a little, gently, warmly, but enough to awaken every blood vessel that's been sleeping all night. And remember, strokes don't always happen when you move too fast. Sometimes, they happen when you've been sitting still too long. Habit 3. Skipping breakfast. Especially if you're on medication. One of the things that concerns me the most when I talk to older patients is when they say something like this. I don't eat breakfast. Doctor, I don't think it's necessary. I just take my pill and have a cup of coffee. That's enough. Have you ever said something like that? I hear it so often. I can almost predict it. A lot of people think breakfast is optional, a habit you can take or leave. And maybe for younger people, that's okay. But after the age of 60, especially when you're taking blood pressure meds, diabetes meds, osteoporosis meds, or even just a little aspirin each morning, skipping breakfast is no longer harmless. It could be the start of a dangerous day. Let me tell you about a patient of mine named Linda. She's 67, retired, and lives alone. She came into my clinic after having a sudden dizzy spell in her kitchen. She didn't faint, but everything went dark. Her heart raced, and she broke out in a cold sweat. What caught my attention wasn't just the symptoms. It was her morning routine. She'd take her blood pressure and diabetes meds at 6 a.m., then not eat anything until almost noon. When I asked her, "Why don't you eat breakfast?" she said, "I'm not hungry. It's just a habit. I can do without it." Plus, I read that skipping breakfast helps with weight loss and detoxing. I get it. We live in a time when health advice is everywhere: intermittent fasting, juice cleanses, cutting breakfast to give your digestion a break. But most of those methods aren't designed for aging bodies. And they're definitely not meant for people who take medication every day. Because after 60, your body's ability to regulate blood sugar weakens. Your liver slows down. Your pancreas reacts slower. And insulin isn't as effective as it used to be. When you take medication that lowers your blood pressure or blood sugar but don't eat, your brain is the first organ to run out of fuel. You might feel lightheaded, tired, irritable, or in more serious cases, you might even faint. And even more importantly, that early morning dip in energy can create tiny disruptions in blood vessels in the brain, small cracks in the wall, so to speak. And those can become the spark that leads to a stroke, especially in a body that hasn't been properly fueled to start the day. Imagine this. You have an empty stomach, but your liver is being pushed to process a pill. Your heart is adjusting pressure. Your blood vessels are trying to maintain volume. That's not a gentle, peaceful morning. That's chemical stress on an empty system. A lot of patients tell me, "But I'm not hungry." Really? And I always tell them, after 60, you don't eat because you're hungry. You eat to keep your body's rhythm steady. You eat so your brain isn't starved. You eat so your medication doesn't turn into a double-edged sword. You don't need a huge meal. No need for eggs and toast and a full plate. Just a little protein, half a boiled egg, a spoonful of plain yogurt, a few soaked walnuts, a slice of whole grain bread. Just enough to get your metabolism going, stabilize your blood sugar, and help the blood flow safely to your brain. Remember this: a stroke doesn't need you to starve for days. It just needs you to miss the wrong moment. I once told a patient, a very determined man trying to lose weight by skipping breakfast. You might lose 2 pounds in a month by skipping breakfast. But you could also lose your ability to walk just because your brain didn't get fuel one morning. That's not fear-mongering. That's what I've seen with my own eyes in the ER, in the ICU, in conversations with families who say, "But Dad was doing fine yesterday," or "Mom just cooked dinner the night before." And then they're in tears because they didn't see the signs. And I know eating breakfast isn't always easy for older adults. Some people feel nauseous in the morning. Some live alone and don't have someone cooking for them. Some say coffee is all they need. But please remember, you don't have to eat a lot, just eat the right thing. I often suggest patients keep a little breakfast tray ready, maybe on the kitchen counter or bedside table. A ripe banana, a cup of yogurt, a hard-boiled egg from the night before, a handful of almonds. So when you wake up right after your warm glass of water, you're ready to nourish your brain and your circulation. Don't let an empty stomach carry the weight of your morning pill. Don't make your heart push harder on a day it hasn't been given what it needs. And above all, don't let a morning with nothing in it become the last memory someone has of you. Tomorrow morning, before you brew that coffee, place your hand on your chest and ask, "Have I given my body anything today?" If not, give it something small, something simple, but given at the right moment with love. Habit 4, taking on stress too early in the morning. Have you ever just opened your eyes in the morning? Before even taking a sip of water, before soaking in the morning light outside your window, and suddenly your phone rings, or messages start flooding in. You reach for your phone and read the first thing on the screen. Bad news, a negative number, or maybe just an email you haven't replied to yet. And within 5 minutes, you feel your heart racing. Your breath shortens. There's this pressure in your chest, something invisible, but heavy, already taking over your entire morning. I've asked hundreds of my patients one simple question. What's the very first thing you interact with when you wake up? Most of the answers start with the same letter, the phone. Now, I'm not here to shame your phone. I use mine too. But the issue isn't the device. It's when you let your mind be pulled into the outside world before you've had a chance to return to your own. See? Your body, after a long night's rest, isn't just physically waking up. It's shifting biological gears from rest to alertness. Your heart rate begins to rise. Your blood pressure slowly increases. Cortisol, your stress hormone, naturally peaks in the morning. That's your body preparing to face the day. But when you pour emotional stress into that exact moment, you double the internal tension. And you may accidentally turn a peaceful morning into the starting point of a stroke. A long-term study published in the journal Stroke Tracking over 93 zeros in people for more than a decade found something striking. People who experienced high psychological stress within the first 3 hours of waking up had a significantly higher risk of stroke. And that was independent of other risk factors like smoking or high blood pressure. Let that sink in. Not all-day stress. Not just workplace anxiety, just early morning emotional pressure by itself was enough to raise stroke risk. I remember one patient, Frank, 65 years old, retired for 3 years, a very disciplined man. He woke up at 6 a.m. sharp, opened his laptop, checked old work emails even though no one asked him to, read financial news, and ate breakfast while tense as a tightened string. When he came to me complaining about mild headaches every morning, I asked, "Do you have any particular morning habits?" He answered proudly, "I don't allow myself to be idle. I start my day by staying informed. The more I know, the better." But here's the thing. Information isn't always wisdom. Some mornings, knowing too much before your brain has had oxygen, it overloads the system. And when you feed your already tired brain a flood of news, work, uncertainty, you create a hormonal storm your heart isn't ready to handle. After talking for a while, I gave Frank a small challenge. No devices for the first 30 minutes of your day. Instead, just sit quietly. Take a walk in your yard. Listen to soft music. Or simply breathe. 3 weeks later, he came back and said, "Doctor, I never knew peace could feel like this. Turns out I don't need to know everything in the morning. I just need to know myself." I'm sharing this not to suggest a complete lifestyle overhaul, but to remind you of this one simple truth. Your morning is the gateway to your entire day. What you let in through that door determines what you carry with you until night. So don't let a headline be the first voice you hear. Don't let one email derail your emotions for the next 12 hours. Don't let the noise of the outside world drown out the quieter signals inside you, the ones still trying to find balance, to recover, and to keep you going one more day. I always encourage my patients to create a quiet morning ritual. It doesn't have to be long or complicated. A cup of tea, a gentle song, a few lines of gratitude in a notebook, or just sitting still, watching the sunlight creep through the blinds, because it's in that silence where your brain finds its rhythm. Your blood vessels rest, and your heart doesn't have to jump into a race before it's even got its shoes on. If you've lived past half a century, you already know it's not about starting early. It's about starting right. And sometimes that right start begins with one small choice. Don't let stress walk in before you do. Habit 5. Not moving your body in the first 1-2 hours of the day. Let's be honest for a second. When you wake up in the morning, what do you usually do in the first hour or two? You might sit in bed, wrapped in your blanket a little longer. Maybe head to the kitchen for a cup of coffee. Turn on the TV. Scroll through your phone to catch up on what happened overnight. Maybe you're still in your pajamas, haven't brushed your teeth yet, and you're still sitting in the same spot, nearly an hour later. Now, I'm not saying you're lazy. Nobody likes to hear that. But here's the truth. A truth I see far too often. Many people over the age of 60 are starting their mornings with stillness. I want you to picture your body like a river. When you sleep, that river slows down. Blood vessels gently tighten. Heart rate drops. Body temperature lowers all so your system can recover. But when you wake up, instead of building a small dam to let the river start flowing again, you build a wall. You sit still. You don't move. Blood doesn't circulate properly. Your veins aren't compressed enough to push blood back toward your heart. And slowly, that river inside you begins to stagnate. After 60, your body's natural circulation system doesn't work quite as well. Vein valves weaken. Capillaries lose elasticity. That's why light movement is no longer just some general advice about daily exercise. It becomes a survival tool, helping prevent blood from pooling in your legs, reducing the risk of clots, and especially lowering your stroke risk. I once treated a patient named James, 73, who lived alone in the suburbs. He was careful, neat, didn't smoke or drink. But one morning, he had a minor stroke while sitting in his pajamas, quietly reading the newspaper like he did every day. He asked me, "Doctor, I walk every afternoon. I'm healthy. Why did this happen to me?" I asked. "Do you move at all in the morning?" He hesitated, then admitted, "I usually sit and read the paper for about an hour before getting dressed and doing anything." There it is. He was moving, but not when it mattered most. He skipped the golden window that first hour after waking up, when movement has the biggest impact on waking up your circulatory system, regulating blood pressure, and preventing clots. A study published in Circulation followed over 8,000 people over 60 and found something alarming. Those who were sedentary for more than 9 hours a day had double the risk of stroke even if they exercised at other times during the day. In other words, it's not just if you move, but when you move. And the morning, especially the first hour after you open your eyes, is the most critical time of all. Now, I know it may not come naturally. Maybe your joints ache, maybe your knees hurt, or your back feels stiff. You might feel tired just standing up, but I'm not talking about going for a run or hitting the gym. I'm talking about smalls, gentle movements, just enough to get your blood flowing. 5 to 10 minutes is enough. Start on the bed, roll your wrists and ankles. Raise your arms above your head a few times. Stretch. Then stand up and walk around your house. Open a window. Water your plants. Even folding your blanket is a form of movement. You don't have to do anything grand. You just need to remind your body, the day has begun. Let the river flow. I once gave this advice to a couple in their 70s. They created a morning ritual together. Every morning, before coffee or the newspaper, they'd take a 10-minute walk around their yard. After 6 months, both had more stable blood pressure. And more than that, they felt more alive. The wife told me, "I never thought a simple walk around the garden would make me feel this good. I used to feel sluggish all morning. Now, just 10 minutes and I feel like I own the day," if you ask me. The secret to long life isn't about how much you do in a day. It's about how you start your day. And if you care about your health after 60, the first thing you should do in the morning isn't checking the news, or taking pills, or making coffee. It's getting up, moving, inviting your blood to circulate, giving your energy a chance to return. Don't let your day start in stillness and end in regret. Don't let a quiet morning become the start of something tragic. Give your body a chance to live in rhythm, to move, to flow, and in that, you'll rediscover a quiet kind of joy. The joy of a peaceful, healthy day. We've just walked through things that might seem small. A clumsy hand, a forgotten word. A moment of slurred speech. A skipped glass of water. A body sitting too long. A breakfast brushed aside. A news alert too early. Or a body that never truly got a chance to wake up. On their own. These things might seem harmless, but when repeated every day, stretched over the years, or landing on the wrong morning, they can become the beginning of a stroke. And then, you or someone you love might lose something they can never get back. A part of their memory, one side of their body, their voice. A peaceful morning. A future that never had a chance. I'm not telling you these things to scare you. I'm telling you because I've seen the regret in the eyes of far too many families. I'm telling you because I believe if you knew, you'd choose differently. After 60, health is no longer just about being sick or not. It's about awareness. It's about whether you're paying close enough attention to your body, whether you love yourself enough to care for it every morning, and whether you're brave enough to change the habits that once felt harmless. A glass of warm water, a moment to stretch, a small bite to eat, a quiet pause before facing the world, a few steps in the garden. Those small things, if done at the right time, can become the most powerful medicine you'll ever take to prevent a stroke. No prescription needed, no advanced device required, just presence. Just intention. I'm not asking you to change everything in one day. I'm simply inviting you starting tomorrow morning to choose one thing to do differently. Maybe it's drinking water before your coffee. Maybe it's eating a bite before taking your meds. Maybe it's not checking your phone for the first 30 minutes. Maybe it's stepping outside, taking a deep breath, and letting your blood flow. Because sometimes, life isn't saved by grand interventions. It's saved by quiet, steady habits, repeated every morning, every single day. If this video helped you, don't keep it to yourself. Share it with your parents, your partner, or anyone you deeply care about. Because who knows, you might be giving them the gift of one more full day. And if you'd like to keep receiving gentle reminders and simple but powerful insights about staying healthy after 50, I invite you to subscribe to my YouTube channel, Wellness Unfolds. That's where Dr. Sam Wells, will be right here, like a trusted friend, helping you navigate each stage of life with more clarity, more confidence, and more calm. Hit that subscribe button, and if it feels right, send this video to someone you want to keep around a little longer. We can't choose our age, but we can choose how we live with it one morning at a time. See you in the next video. Wishing you a peaceful morning and a life fully lived, heartbeat by heartbeat.